The last thing I want to hear from anybody is I didn't vote, right? And if you didn't vote, you ain't got nothing to say. Don't even show up then. But you ain't got nothing to say. You can't complain, can't do nothing. Because this is your one day to show and exercise your citizenship here in the United States. So make sure that you go out and vote. It's the most important thing that you can do, and it's an important thing for our democracy.
We'll discuss race and how it plays a factor, and how we didn't even talk about this topic because we were afraid.
A Black Executive Perspective.
Welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast, a safe space where we discuss all matters related to race, especially race in corporate America. I'm your host, Tony Tidbit.
And I'm your co-host, Chris P. Reed. We want to always start out by giving a shout out to our partners at Code M Magazine. Code M Magazine, where their mission is saving the Black family by first saving the Black man. That is Code M Magazine, 2Ms.com. Code M Magazine, make sure you check them out.
Yeah, definitely make sure you check them out. And today, we want you to check out what we're going to do. So my partners in crime, Chris P. Reed and the Dr. Nsenga Burton, our contributor on Need to Know each Thursday, and I will delve into a crucial discussion on the upcoming presidential election. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to scrutinize the major issues, the policies at stake. We're going to cover the defining platforms of both candidates and evaluate their impact across various demographics. More importantly, we'll examine the complexities of voter engagement and the controversies influencing the political landscape and discuss the broader implications of the election results. Dr. Nsenga Burton, Chris P. Reed, welcome to a Black Executive Perspective podcast. You guys ready to talk about this or what?
We are.
Yeah.
You just smiling, Dr. Burton.
Let's go. I can't wait.
Yeah, she's chomping at the bit. I can tell. It's gonna be some trouble today.
She ain't never lost for words. She ain't never lost for words, right? So I was thrown up. I was like, wait, she ain't saying nothing, right?
No,
she just smiling.
She came in subtle. She came in subtle like a bank robber.
Okay, all right. So I love it. All right. So threw me off big time. Okay. So you guys ready to talk about it? Let's talk about it. So Dr. Burton, I'm going to go right to you, right? My question is, what are the key issues at stake in this election based on your perspective?
Well, I think the key issues at stake, one, the biggest issue as it relates to the entire election is misinformation and disinformation. I think that there's so many conspiracy theories floating around about so many different things that it's hard for people to parse between them and to figure out what's true and what's accurate and what's right and what's wrong and who's doing what and what have you. So I think that's a major issue that's impacting this campaign on both sides. I think some of it's being trumpeted by one particular side more so than I'll just say the Republicans that are running for office, not all Republicans, just the ones that are running for office, for this particular office. And that is a major problem. I think another issue is women's rights. Obviously, the threat of a federal abortion ban, against abortion, period. With no exceptions to the rule. And we've already seen several cases where that plays out and where people, particularly Black women in the two most high profile cases, have lost their lives because of their lack of access to abortion and to follow-up care. So I think that that's a major issue. I think the economy is a major issue. We've added a lot of jobs this last quarter, which is good. And so it seems like it's going in the right direction, but with some of the ideas that are being kicked around by both parties, I guess depending on where you stand, it can be problematic in terms of, are we going to go backwards? Are we going to head truly in a different direction? If we have one candidate, are we going to continue on this path? And is it really good for us if we continue with the same party in office? So I think those are the major issues. And then of course immigration, but we can talk about that later. Immigration is, I think, a defining issue, particularly with as much space as it has claimed. So I'll stop.
Okay, cool. I mean, you covered a lot, my girls, to be honest with you. I was thinking of the immigration, but then I was like, did she? And then and immigration. I was like, she got them all. Okay. So Chris P. Reed, what's your thoughts, my brother?
I think that as opposed to misinformation, it's just pure education. So when you look at basic blocking and tackling grade school, you learn about politics or the government in three forms: legislative, executive, and judicial, right? And so a lot of people tend to the key is, or the game is, to make you forget about that and make you think that the macro presidency is all powerful, all encompassing. So what happens is Barack Obama is running, and don't worry, even if he wins, he can't do anything because there's so many different layers and levels and puts and calls that you have to make in order to make, effective policy change. Donald Trump is running. He can magically wand change everything because the president has, innumerable powers to be, exonerated.
Omnipotent, right?
Come on, man, ain't they? So the issue is when you look at the executive, thing, it's your mayors, your governors, your presidents. Then you got your judges on the judicial side, which is appointed, which can be appointed, which he did that with the Supreme Court justices, right? Which led to certain things from a judicial perspective, which is Congress, city council, blah, blah, blah. Those are shorter terms, but we don't focus on that. Everybody thinks that politics and election cycles are presidential. And we've been duped to believe that it's a one-time end-all be-all every 4 years, like a leap year type situation. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff for 4 more years. And that's where we lose our way. Right. I think that that miseducation or that misinformation or the lack of design or desire by the people to really understand the power that they have is part of the issue that we run into. Now, obviously, a political party is different than a special interest group. But for whatever reason, the GOP has melded that dynamic into one consolidated deal where you have special interest group affinities being presented as political platforms. And that's why it's so confusing, is because they're hodgepodging all this stuff together and you don't know where you're coming or going. So basically you cover your eyes and select somebody. And that's what they want. You dig? You know what I'm saying, Dr. Burton? I mean, I'm simplifying the hell out of it just for the sake of making sure we meet people where they are, but that's ultimately the game.
Right. Let me ask you guys both a follow-up question, and I'm going to go back to Dr. Burton because you laid out the issues at stake, and then Chris, you took it to another level in terms of the American people lack of information, a lack of more ignorance in terms of how the political system works, right? So, Dr. Burton, you said a woman's right to choose. You said the economy. You also said misinformation. You said immigration. And you said something else, but I forgot. But let me ask you this, going back to Chris's point. A lot of people, unfortunately, because they're not educated really on how the president, it is just a CEO position, okay? And understanding that the United States, if we had to make it in simplistic terms from a Navy, from a ship standpoint, it's like, I don't want to use the word Titanic, but it's an aircraft carrier. Let's look at it like that, right? Where at the end of the day, for it to make any moves, to do anything right or left, or anything that happens, it takes time for those things to actually, those policies that may be put in place may not show up for 3-4 years later down the road, right? So when we talk about misinformation, and then I'm going to dovetail it to education, a lot of people think, in Chris's point of view, at least from Donald Trump's supporters, that he's going to come in and he's going to do a couple moves in the economy, is going to be great. He's going to do a couple moves and the war in Ukraine is going to end. He's going to do a couple moves and, immigration, he said he's going to come in and it's the second day he's going to deport 15 million people, right? Which we know he can't do. Right? We know if we back up, he inherited, when back in 2016, when he took over, he inherited an economy from Barack Obama. Okay, see, nobody wants to talk about that, right? But he has people thinking that he came and fixed an economy, which he didn't, right? And that's not, look, let's be fair. Presidents, and me and Chris, you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, right? When you get in the seat, whatever happens on your watch, you either take credit for or you get the blame for, okay? And so at the end of the day, there's not a lot that you can do immediately Because what's going to happen, whatever policies you institute are going to show up later. Because again, this is an aircraft carrier. This is the Titanic. It takes a lot. Nobody can snap a finger and things change. So, Dr. Burton, talk a little bit about the educational because there's going to be people who are going to go cast a vote, and we want to make sure that they understand, regardless of who they vote for, but they understand that the person that they're going to vote for, and it may be a certain policy or platform that's important to them, but just recognize how the system actually works.
Yeah, that's a great point that you're raising and that Chris raised. It is really disheartening to see how ill-informed so many of us are, because we spend a lot of time on civics in the public school system and actually in the private school system too. We call it civics, history, things of that nature, and that's where you learn about the branches of government. And the branches of government are really supposed to be checks and balances, right? And the press is the next, fourth estate, because it's the checks and balances of the three branches of government. So you don't have to go to college to know that. You don't actually even have to make it to high school. All you have to do is pay attention in elementary and middle school, and you should know that information. You should also know how a bill becomes a law. We had Schoolhouse Rock just to reinforce it.
I was just about to. I just a bill. I'm
right.
only and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that was our
I
song,
still
right?
remember that was our stuff.
Yes. So we had that kind of programming too, and there weren't like a billion channels and stuff like that. So it was just a different time. So we can romanticize it or whatever. But somebody would call me revisionist because it's so far away. It was so far removed. But what I'm saying was there was a time when we were intentionally teaching about civics, when it was reinforced in our programming. And it was children's programming, and it was made for kids and things of that nature. It's a different day. Like, that's just not happening. And a lot of people are just not paying attention. But I think a lot of people are engaging in what we call willful ignorance, right? Because the minute that Chris said, the three branches of government, immediately I went back to Miss Mack. Immediately I went back to Miss Mack.
Right.
I remembered her specifically and how she taught us that. So I think people are engaging in willful ignorance because they are being driven by other things, right? And so maybe it's xenophobia if you think about immigration. Maybe it's sexism if you think about this assault or this attack on women's rights to their full health care, right? Their whole health care, their bodies. There are other things that are really driving this, what I call willful ignorance. And people don't want to admit it, right? So they're like, oh, I'm going to vote for Trump for the economy. No, you're going to vote for Trump because you don't like immigrants, because you think they took your job that you didn't go and try to get anyway.
Right.
Because you've been inheriting jobs for 400 years. Sorry, Tony.
No. Listen.
You've been inheriting jobs for 400 years. Now you got to compete for your job, and you're pissed about it because now you're in a generation that actually has to compete for the job and didn't inherit the job and didn't have, and you have competition because people before you didn't have competition because there were laws in the books that discriminated against whole populations of people, whether it's blacks, Catholics, just fill in the blank, right? Jews, just fill in the blank. So now you're mad because this is my personal opinion, because you got to do what the rest of us have been doing. And that is compete for the job and maybe get it or maybe not get it. Right. That's kind of what happens. Compete for the spot. Maybe you get in, maybe you don't. Maybe the service takes you, maybe they don't. You got to show up though. Right. And so I think a lot of things are driving other things, ideological things, belief systems are driving this willful ignorance that is leading to disinformation, which is a campaign to intentionally spread misinformation in order to confuse people, which is what Chris is talking about, right? And to get them away from the basic tenets of government, how it works, right? Who the president is, what their role is, what their reach is, even the vice president. I mean, we've seen that with Kamala, them blaming everything on her over the last, 4 years. And I'm like, so can you, just tell me what the last vice president, what did Mike?
Yeah, what vice president writes? Yeah, what vice president writes policy?
Right. I'm sorry, I'm confused. I'm still waiting. I mean, it doesn't matter which party, but I just want you to name something.
Exactly.
That vice president. I mean, Al Gore says he invented the internet.
Right.
So that's a joke, people. It's a joke. Right. It's a joke. But I'm like, seriously, when you're a vice president, your job is to support the president and their policies and to help him, her, hopefully her one day, to enact those policies in the way that they see fit. And that has to happen by going through Congress and all kinds of things, right? And then we have state governments, which nobody wants to talk about either, right?
Right.
So I think that is the thing that we have to talk about, right? What is it that is driving people so forcefully, such that they are just unwilling to pay attention to what the reality is of these offices? What
Right.
does it mean? Why would you vote against your own interests,
Right.
right?
Right.
If you are pro-immigration, why are you voting? Then why are you voting for Trump? It might be because you're a sexist. It might be, right? Or maybe you like one of those people who close the door behind you, right? I came in
Right.
as an immigrant. We don't need no more. That kind of stuff.
Because
But
your
admit
mindset
what it
changes.
is. Right.
Right.
Just admit what it is, but stop pretending that you actually know something that you don't know, and stop,
Right.
hiding behind these conspiracy theories. And I would say these political parties, and really say what it is that is driving you.
Chris, piggyback on that. So, what do you think? Do you think, based on what Dr. Burton just got finished saying, that at the end of the day, people talk, they can talk policies, they can talk, I believe in this, I believe in that. But do you believe net, they're voting more for a society type thing, or a grievance that they may have, versus any type of research that they've done with these candidates? It's time to rethink your protein. AgriLab's protein bars are crafted with high-quality protein, double the leucine, and enriched branched-chain amino acids, essential for optimal muscle recovery. There's finally a protein bar that works as hard as you do. So visit agrilabs.com and use the code BEP to get 20% off. That's agrilabs.com, promo code BEP.
I believe that people don't know or understand the concept of voting and the power that voting has. And so, one thing I will say before we get too far away from this, I am of the opinion that the vice presidency symbolizes business continuity and strength, another layer of support in case something does and has happened to presidents in past, right? Both Lincoln and Kennedy had VPs named Johnson that came in and took the helm after they were assassinated, those type of deals. Not that this is going to be that at all. I'm not casting any spells, but the moral of the story is that's the vice president has to stay at the ready to take the helm with confidence and show global confidence. And that's the biggest burden that the vice president holds. And that's why I give them so much grace in the background, where they don't need to be all in the camera and doing all this and all that, because they getting ready constantly. So that's number one. But the other thing, Tony, is that I believe that people are now lemmings in the idea of just, unfortunately, we should have art imitating life. And because of reality TV and sensationalism, and it's been like that since, the early newspaper. We did this in Wilmington's Live, right? People tend to have life imitating art. Somebody comes up with something and you see it and you think, oh, that could happen here, or that could be this. You're not doing the math at all. And so a lot of people don't do the math. They don't know, like Dr. Burton said, they don't know the specifics of why they're doing things. They make it an emotional push, but they don't realize the trickle down effect of an emotional, immediate decision as it cascades. And the reason why this checks and balance is not working as constructed is because you have a candidate that threatens people verbally and openly if they don't abide by what he feels they should be doing, even though he has no prerequisite understanding of their roles or their jobs,
Right.
even though he has no backing, no education, no frame of reference as to how that should work. It's so many generals and high profile people who have come out and said, this person is absolutely incompetent to lead me and the division of people in which I lead. Yet it's entertaining to see this drama play out on TV. People really do believe it's a reality show.
Yeah.
So that is the hardest part as a historian. The one thing I'll say here at this point, the hypocrisy. I know we don't have time to get into that, and I know that's one of your pet peeves, Dr. Burton. The hypocrisy is outrageous. But the concept of I'm all about the Constitution until it's not fitting my needs, and then we need to change things and be progressive. George Washington had a quote where he said, the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of a party serves always to distract the public counsel and enfeeble the public administration. He was against parties because he knew this kind of stuff happens. And what a lot of people don't realize at this point in time is there are dozens of other parties. There's libertarians, there's Tea parties, there's Green parties, there's been other parties. And if they get 5% vote, they can get federal funding. But the desire for control, a party's design is to control the government. This is not about you and me and her and rights and this. This is about control. Let's just keep it a buck. This is about people trying to figure out how to manipulate and stranglehold the control of the U.S. budget, the U.S. power, the U.S. interest as they see fit.
So, and buddy, I mean, you guys, what you've been doing all day, you guys been pent up, coming on strong. All right, I love it. I love it. So I want to come back to that because I want to, let's put a pin in that because I want to come back to your last statement. Let's go here. So, Dr. Burton, I'm going to go back to you. All right, I know you ready, okay? So how does this election compare to the previous one in terms of the importance and the public interest in it?
Well,
What's your thoughts?
This election is important because this next person is going to probably appoint 1 to 2 Supreme Court justices. They also are going to have the ability to put justices, judges in different
At the federal Supreme Court level,
at
stuff
different
like
levels.
that.
Thank you. At different
Levels,
levels. Some of them are lifetime appointments. The Supreme Court doesn't only have lifetime appointments, and so I think that's what was important about the last election and what's important about this election. I also think that this election is important because we have to. It's kind of a test to see how far you can go with misinformation and disinformation. And win an election, that is this important because even though, we know the president doesn't work alone, the United States president is considered the most powerful office in the land, right? And so that is going to communicate, across the waters, what kind of country we are, what we're made of, and who we are. The majority of us, anyway, who participate in the voting process. So I think that's important. And I think the same thing that was with the last election, the election before that is the Electoral College. Does it really fit? When we think about the Constitution, does it still fit? It really doesn't. I mean, can you win the popular vote and still lose the election? Yes, we've seen it before. We could see it again. And is that really reflective of what we say we are as a country where every person, each person one vote? So I think those are the things that are on the ballot. And then, of course, women's rights, which I've said before. Are we going to be okay going backwards? And we know what that looks like. We have the history, we have the data to show that it was awful for women. It was awful for whole families. It wasn't just the women. It was their children. It was their spouses. It was all the things. But it was awful. But are we going to go back to that? And if so, then what does this nation look like?
Right.
When other nations, Ireland has abortion, and it's a very, very Roman Catholic nation.
Right.
But
right.
you can't ever foresee what people need in terms of health, and to just have that one thing, and not to minimize it, because I know people feel very strongly about it, but to have that one thing in terms of the whole comprehensive idea of women's health or reality of women's health. That's what I meant. Reality of women's health. To have that one thing making that determination and how it affects women in so many different ways, and families is nuts. So I think those are the things that we should have been thinking about in the last election, and things that we should be thinking about in this particular election, because that is what's on the ballot. Our future is on the ballot.
Right. Chris, same question.
I think that, one of the things that's on display here is what America we are, right? And so the concept of, I used to really fear as an educated person, the things that can be done in anonymity, like the Electoral College. When you don't have a checks and balance, we talked about, she brought it up, Dr. Burton brought it up, the checks and balance. Well, that operating in the background, Donald Trump has never won the public election. Just keep that in mind.
You mean a popular vote?
Popular election. So the anonymity that the Electoral College can move in is very suspicious of me. But now we add on to the fact that the transformation of the GOP audaciously, it's not just anonymous anymore. They audaciously say whatever they want to say and say, I get to say whatever I want to say. I get to do whatever I want to do with impunity. The danger of switching to a government that is operating under that auspices is more pivotal to me than anything else, because And we had this show before, Tony, where you was like, you know who he is, you know how he get down. That's just what he's gonna do. And I'm saying, cuz you got to dress for the occasion at some point, and we can't just let people run amok because we know that they act the ass sometimes. No, this is not the platform for that. And we have more and more people coming at the woodworks. Now, the pivotal aspect of this election is, it is my hope that we can return to some semblance of civility if this man loses and lets it go. Caveat, and lets it go. Because I don't believe anyone, we have had enough time to cultivate a Junior Trump mentality. It's a lot of pretenders out there that act Trump, but it's hard to be that foolish. You know what I'm saying? In a short amount of time in your adulthood, right? And things like that. It's hard.
I live in Georgia, so I got Mary, Taylor Greene down, Marjorie Taylor Greene down here. So
okay, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
it's
you know what? I just saw something.
A couple of doppelgangers.
Yeah. No, they close. But go ahead, Chris.
But the idea of that type of ignorance or that type of proliferation of misinformation or once again xenophobia, like some of the things that he rides out with is the worst part of any society, not just ours. Any society doesn't want that, and that's some of his. It's not. I'm not going to say it's his platform because that's irresponsible to say. But if you start listening, there's nothing that says presidential or classic political U.S. political structure about the things that he represents. And once again, if you understand enough, you realize these are interest group type of dynamics as opposed to political party bringing the country together, galvanizing the citizens. He's segmenting and separating every chance he gets. And now we have a divided line. I'm not going to go so far as to say civil war, but we have a dividing line to where this is going to show which team you're on.
Right. You know, so here's the thing. And so, Chris, I want to pick up. I'm gonna answer because I have my own thoughts with this question. Mm-hmm. So, but number one is this: recognize one thing. You know, your crew. If you don't have a crew, then you can't act up. Mm-hmm. But if you have a crew, you can act up. Mm-hmm. So, in other words, the reason he can do what he does, because he's got a ton of people that's behind him, okay? And so you have to go deeper than just him, okay? Because the bottom line is, it goes back. See, here's the thing. And I'm a historian, too, not on the level of you, Chris, or you, Dr. Burton, but I just been around long enough, and I remember how things were. And, and I've studied history and the whole nine yards. People don't recognize that when John F. Kennedy Jr., was the president. He was having affairs left and right, okay? But the press knew about it, but they would never report on it because they felt that was his personal business, all right? So think about how we went from 1960 to 2024. I remember, what was the dude's name? He was about to run for president, Gary, whatever his name was, and then Gary Hart.
Gary Hart, that's right.
Okay? And there was just a picture of him and Donna Rice on a yacht. And done. Finished. His career was over. Just the look of an impropriety was done. Okay? Because the country wasn't dealing with that. Now, you have somebody that can say anything they want to say, lie repeatedly, put his own citizens in harm's way by his lies. And guess what? People accept it. You see, so how much is that him? And how much is that us as a society? You see, because buddy, I know you're like, whoa, but wait a minute, because I just talked about, and I just gave you small examples. Correct. I just talked about years ago where this type of stuff wasn't even, but he couldn't run for mailman, okay, with that type of stuff, right? So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
I'll say this: Ronald Reagan was the first divorced president, right? And that's because the rate of divorce had increased, and so it could identify more with people who had marriages that just happened to not work out. Nancy ended up being a wonderful woman, God rest her soul. But those type of things where America tried to identify its leader with its own dirty laundry, its own encompassing personalities, has run amok in the idea of this man had an affair with a porn star while his wife was pregnant. that has become public. Like the affair, if it was just the affair, if it was just a picture on a yacht, I would be like, okay.
No. But Chris, my point is,
this is way worse than that.
But that's my point, though, right? It is way worse, but the people are accepting of it. Dr. Burton, let me get your thoughts in it.
I think that former President Trump holds a mirror up to society, and
Exactly.
when he lost the last time, people were like, oh, because it looked like it was going to be so close. It was like, oh, it's the last gasp, but by these racist, white supremacist, sexist, patriarchal, and xenophobes, anti-LGBT. This is the last gasp. We're getting rid of those people. The society is going to be what we want it to be. It's going to look like the real world. All the things. I remember all the pundits talking about this. And what it did, his election and the subsequent loss, at which he lied about repeatedly, is really fuel those very people that they thought were going to go away or were going to die off or whatever. And it actually freed those people who have been quietly like that, right? But they still want a job. They still want to live in a certain neighborhood. They still want to go to a particular church. They still want their kids to play with a certain person's kids because that's good for them at work. But they've kept all of those evil and hateful parts of them hidden, and their thoughts hidden, or they think they have safe, what I call people of color, right? So, Tony, you're great because you're a different Black guy from the rest of them. That kind of stuff.
Right.
So they got one Black friend. They might adopt. We're going to talk about this too, Tony, tomorrow. They might adopt a Black kid, especially from overseas, right? To kind of give these kind of cues that they're just like everyone else. And then you start talking to them and listening to them, and you're like, wait a damn second. I had this experience earlier today. I know this for a fact. This is my experience, but I had it today where I was like, wait, is this? So I texted someone. I said, "Is so-and-so mentally ill?" Like literally just went off the rails about some conspiracy theory stuff, and I was just really shocked by it because the person, educated and all the things. But then I realized, oh, that's who she is. She's kind of hiding it from me, right? Right. I don't get down like that, which is why I was like, I'm about to cut her. Is there something else I need to know because we can't talk no more? But so I think that he freed those people to really embrace what they believed the whole time with, these hateful things that empower them, right? See, I told you those people weren't good people, so that's why they don't need to have access to jobs. That's why they don't need to have access to education. They don't know what to do with it anyway. You talk about Ronald Reagan, about when John Wayne famously said that, the natives were sitting over here, and this is on Indigenous Peoples Day. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to people. Right. But the natives were sitting over here doing nothing with the land, so we had to come take it so we could teach them what they needed to do with it. Right? That kind of mentality. And I think that's what's shocking, Tony, especially when you live in a bubble, because we all live in bubbles. Nobody wants to talk about that either. So, like, whoever your crew is, that's your crew. The world is, right. So that's why you get shocked when you think your crew is this, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm voting for this person," or "I believe this," or "I believe that," or "I'm against this," or "I'm against that," and you're just like, "Wait a second, I thought we were like."
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. And and listen, I'm American. You can vote for anybody you want to believe, right? But to your point, when you look at people and you think, when you hear them and you hear their rhetoric, and then all of a sudden they say something, and then you look at them and they actually believe it, and you're like, you're not who I thought you were, right? It's especially these last 10 years or so. Chris, jump in, buddy.
I need Dr. Burton to give me a vocabulary lesson. And so, unfortunately, I need you to go into a mind of a woman, a female, in the concept of, how do you convince me that racism is actually xenophobia when the fact is you and your running mate have spouses that are from or one removed from another country,
who are immigrants.
And it's not, so that's not xenophobia. Let's just specifically talk about Donald Trump. Xenophobia, if people don't know this, it's a fear of foreign people, foreign interest, foreign domination, blah, blah, blah. Racism is in his perspective, is black and brown. So he's cool. He's cool enough to marry a foreigner, but talks about foreigners like dogs. How does she reconcile that in her own spirit, in her own mind, that my husband is constantly talking about other countries like dogs, yet I'm not from this country or of this country?
Because anti-black racism is pervasive. It's worldwide. The more you travel, even and when you go to the continent, when you go to the continent, you know, I mean, it's shockingly present. Anti-black racism is the one thing that the rest of the world has, and they have in common, and
So
that is
why do
why
we allow for
people
them to
can.
call it xenophobia instead of just calling a spade a spade? Ironically.
Well, I think what he's doing, like targeting certain groups like the Haitians, right? Because that is racism and that's xenophobia, right? Because they're black. So, you know, and I think that people have a very different idea, even how people come over to the United States in terms of what the policies are, right? So, you know, if you are a white or European like Melania is, you know, white presenting, that's what I'll say, white presenting
Okay.
immigrant, then, you know, people are like, cool, because, you know, you come over and until she starts talking, she looks like, you know, what
Absolutely. She could pass.
American
Yep.
looks like,
Sarah
right?
Jane. Yep.
Right. But then they're saying yes, yes. And so then when other folks come over and they look like us, black
Yep.
people, or
Yep.
I would say multiracial, or, you know, like, you know, the young people call it exoticals or whatever you want to say, all of these things, they're like, wait a second, this is changing the look and feel of America. This is changing and this is
Oh
moving it
man.
too far. And so what they do is couch it in terms of people taking things, right? Taking things. Oh, they come over here and I can't get any money when I'm down on my luck, but they can come over here and get social security numbers and
Right,
money and
right,
housing and
right,
food
right,
and all
right,
this kind of stuff. We
right,
can't get anything, you know,
right.
which we know is not true. I mean, you do have to be on your ass to get anything in the United States. That is true. But but you know, when people are trying to escape certain situations, you know, that's not necessarily true when we think about those things. Um, but I'm just saying, when we think about what they do, right? It's like, oh, they're taking your jobs. So they don't want to say, oh, it's because these people are from Mexico or from Central America. Oh, they're criminals. They're coming over here and killing our people, right? You know, like the young woman, unfortunately, who was killed in Georgia, that they've now made a political issue. And, you know, people are like, oh, they were from out of the country. Well, the killer's brother worked at UGA. So I'm like, well, how did he get a job at the governor's alma mater if he's so anti-immigrant? So it's okay for him to work there as long as he's doing that. But, you know, if he's not working for you for whatever, you know, whatever you want, for whatever fees or whatever that you think is desirable for you, then they have no use. And that's just what
So
it is.
let me ask you guys this. So what I'm hearing, and while I'm listening to both of you, I'm reflecting on certain things that I've seen on television. I don't know if you guys ever remember the Twilight Zone. You ever watch Twilight Zone with Rod Sterling,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And then there
I
was this
watch
one.
it every weekend, actually.
Yeah, okay.
On,
So there was this.
science fiction channel. But
I saw this episode. I probably was 15, 16. And, you know, Twilight Zone was made in the late 50s, early 60s, right? And they had this one episode where the show comes on and this group of people, they're having dinner together, right? And they're all around the table and they're having a good time, blah, 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 blah. Then all of a sudden the kid runs in and said, Daddy, I just heard on the radio that I think we're under attack, right? And everybody's like, what? Blah, 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 right? So they break out. And they think they're being, this was the nuclear scare, right? So this is back in the day where everybody, so the one person had a bomb shelter, okay? The neighbor, right? And all of a sudden, these people that were best friends, having dinner together, one of them was a Mexican. Okay. And then and then they were trying to get into the bomb shelter. My man, the neighbor, right? And he wouldn't let him in. And then the dude turned to the dude he was hugging and said, it's your fault. You came over this guy, and then socked him. All right. And they were just friends. Why do I bring that up? I'll tell you why. Because what I'm hearing from you guys, as esteemed as you are, as smart as you are, what I'm hearing is policy don't matter. Execution don't matter. What this election is about, the sum of all fears, okay? It's about getting people to be afraid, okay? And when people are afraid, they're irrational, facts don't matter, Disinformation goes out of the wayside. Okay? Policies don't matter. Plot, it doesn't matter, because now it's all about fear. They're going to take this from you. They're coming in this country. They're doing this. They're going to rob you. And so even the most rational, I still see that picture of people sitting around the table having dinner together. Now they're not friends no longer. They're not neighbors. Now they're enemies, because now I don't see you as my neighbor, as a fellow American. I see you in my dreams as something that's going to take from me, and I don't want it, and it comes out. And I'm voting this way because it doesn't matter if this person lies. Doesn't matter he's been convicted. It doesn't matter that he tried insurrection. All those things that we should be afraid of. It shouldn't even be a contest, okay? It shouldn't even be a contest. All those things that we should, from a rational standpoint, we should be afraid of, we're not even thinking about that now, because he's going to save me from them. Let me hear you guys' thoughts on that.
I'll let you go first, ma'am. Ladies first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true. I was sitting here thinking about I used to teach a class called intercultural communication, which we talked about these kinds of issues. And at the beginning of the class, I used to ask, what are you willing to give up so that other people can be free? Right. And at the end of the class, after, 16 weeks, I'd ask, what are you willing to give up? And this is after all the teaching and learning, all wonderful experiences, all the things, the answer never changed. Mm-hmm. It's nothing. It's nothing. And that is the problem.
That's
right?
the issue.
Right? And I'm not saying we should come from a scarcity model. Like, there's not enough. We got to do this. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that at times in life, you have to decide what you're willing to forego, right? In order to help someone else. Like, you just have to do that, right? And a lot of people, Americans, are not wired that way. That's not what our culture is. It's like bootstrap. Every man for himself. And I mean that. Every man for himself. And so it's a different type of ideology that we're fighting against. And it's a very strong ideology about what it means to be an American. What does an American look like? We've had the media reinforcing that for years.
That's
decades,
right.
Over 100 years, right?
Right.
What does an American look like? What does hard work look like? All of these things are just so defined in a very limited type of way. And so you are right. People are focused on fear. They are dealing out of emotion. It's like, if you are looking at, because even today when I was prepping for this, I said, okay, let me just do a little checks and balances, policy on this, policy on that, policy on, I mean, if you are a logical person, you should be able to look at their policies and make a decision.
Correct.
That's it.
Correct.
Like, if you just look at the policies,
if you just look at the policies
and what's important to you, you should be able to make a decision. All these people who are undecided, I don't know how you're undecided at this point. That is emotion. You mad at Trump because something he did 30 years ago. You mad at Kamala because something she did 30 years ago. Okay, we got a whole lot happening right here, right now. Mm-hmm. We can look over it. He's the former president. She is the vice president, senator, all the things before that. They got records. You can look at their stuff. You can see what they have done. Look at those things and make an informed decision. Make the decision that is best for, in most cases, you, but in some cases, other people. Do you?
Mm-hmm. So Mr. Miyagi, he agrees with you, right? He's like, you supposed to be thinking about me right now while you on this podcast.
Yeah, Mr. Miyagi. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna have to get a studio for real. But yeah. So these are the things that we have to be thinking about. And why is it that people are still on the bubble? Why are people still saying crazy stuff like, they're just the same people. They're not the same people. They're not the same candidate. If you actually read through their policies, they're very different. If you look at Project 2025, which has, Donald Trump is like, I don't have anything to do with that. He's in the opening, like he's written part of it. Right. So it's like, yeah, the policies are very different. Like, you gonna get something different if you vote for this person than what you get with this person. And so that's what we have to talk about. But nobody wants to have that conversation because it's too hard. Because then you have to look at yourself and be like, I'm a racist. I'm a xenophobe. I'm a sexist. I'm conservative, or I'm too free, whatever you want to do. But you have to look at yourself and figure out where you are and why you are so worried or bothered by how other people live their lives.
Right, right. Chris, real quick, buddy, and I want to move something else.
No problem. My fear is that we exist in this Lord of the Flies for so long that it becomes normalized. And then secondly, and more importantly, is that if you take away the color, the gender, and the sexual orientation, then what you have is what a leadership strive for is a utilitarian dynamic where you do the best good for the most amount of people. What am I doing that's going to affect the most amount of people positively? But I have to take away race. I have to take away sex, gender. I have to take those. And then, like Dr. Burton said, now you just have policies, agnostic policies. But the fact is, people see a policy and love it until they see my picture there,
Right.
or until they see a woman there, or until they
Right.
see a transport. They take all of the goodness out of it because of the bias that they bring into it.
Correct.
And that's where we're losing ground, because we're focusing on those things as opposed to focusing on the meat and potatoes. Is that
Buddy,
short enough?
buddy, I mean, I'm gonna have to. We got to get Chris. We got to get him. He got to get out there on the book tour or something, because he breaks it down very succinctly and tight. I love it. I love what you said. So I'm going to come back to you on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So let's go to some policies. Let's go to Kamala, because to be fair, we've been talking more about Trump. So based on what we just got finished, you guys got finished saying, including myself, why isn't she further ahead? Why is this even a close race? I'd love to hear some thoughts on that. Because, and again, look, I ain't got no problem saying I ain't voting for him. Okay, I'm just being straight up, right? I want everybody to vote. I want you to vote whatever you think. You're an American. People died for this right, so you vote. Okay, but at the end of the day, I'm wondering, based on all, and we can look at from, like you said, if it wasn't, you take gender, you take race, you take all your biases out, and you just look at the policies, right? That should help you narrow down who you want to vote. If you like what you hear and you want to join us on this journey of making uncomfortable conversations comfortable, please subscribe to a Black Executive Perspective podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe now to stay connected for more episodes that challenge, inspire, and lead the change. Thank you for being part of our community. But then, even if you throw in character, and you got to throw in character, okay? Let's be fair, okay? You got to throw that in, okay? You can't be biased on that, right? When you throw that in, I mean, it shouldn't even, and again, I don't want to say that. Why do you think why this still is a tight race?
Racism, sexism, and xenophobia. I mean, I know I hate to sound like a one-trick pony.
Man.
I love it. No.
I hate to say that.
Hold on. I went through all that. Everybody's looking straight in the screen. It was like racism, sexism, and xenophobia. Tony.
I thought you were summarizing what just had been established.
Exactly.
No, why is she? Okay, go ahead.
Kamala Harris
I'm
is our most qualified president ever.
Yep.
She has been at all levels.
So when you say most, so give us some facts
she has been
behind.
at all levels of government. She's been a senator. She's been a vice president running for president. Right? That just does not.
Attorney General.
Attorney General. Oh yeah. District attorney. She's got every local, state, federal. She's been in every form of government, right? And worked and done things, authored bills, like all the things, right? So she's done all of that. But in addition to that, when you think about her policies about the people, right? She wants to tax billionaires, which doesn't often happen in a way that makes it good for the rest of the country, right? So what happens is the middle class, and there's no real middle class in the United States. It's really wealthy people and people without, and there's very few people who meet any of the real economic definitions. But let's just say the so-called middle class is just taxed to death under Republicans because they wanted to, because the idea is that corporations will then hire more people and will stimulate the economy and blah, blah, blah. It does not happen. They just keep the money and they give it to their investors. Then you have Democrats who then are like, okay, we're going to tax the big corporations, and then we'll use that money to underwrite some of these programs that we really want to do to make America run better. So that's why and what does work with that is that's why you get the infrastructure, you get the bridges fixed, you get the roads fixed, you get the things that you complain about. That's what happens because you have more money working that way. So when you talk about Kamala Harris, she's talking about, entrepreneurship, giving people money to start businesses, which is hard to do. And it's not a lot of money. It's $20K, which is a lot of money for some people, right?
Right.
But it's $20K. Look, Tony and I'll take it. Chris will take it. You know what I mean? Do something with it, flip it, do it. But
where do I sign?
Exactly.
I'll take 10.
Right. But and these are also policies that are going to help everybody. But it's really hard. Entrepreneurship, I've been a director of an entrepreneurship center. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 20 years. All of the things, I teach business, things of that nature. Being an entrepreneur is one of the most difficult things that you can do. She's launching a national health equity initiative that focuses on Black men. Now, this is why I'm like, bugging when Black men are like, I'm not voting for her. I can't. And it's not all of you all, of course, but it's just some.
It's a small percentage.
I can't. It's a small percentage.
Right.
But I was just like, have you looked at the policies? Because all of this stuff meets you. Entrepreneurship, National Black Health Equity Initiative. She wants to legalize marijuana. I'm not saying that's a Black thing because I know a lot of white folks who smoke weed. I'm just saying. But she wants to legalize marijuana. But a lot of us were in jail for long periods of time for smoking, getting caught smoking, dealing a little bit of marijuana or what have you. Lowering costs on price gouging at the grocery store. That's a big deal. If you buy groceries or if you have bought groceries, that is a big deal. So because we are clearly being gouged. Their profits are through the roof. They're doing great. They got us bagging our own stuff. They got one person ringing it up. Everybody else is standing in line bagging their own stuff. And they got the profits through the roof, and then everything is even more expensive. So I'm like, why is it so expensive? Because I feel like I work here. I feel like I need a spot and a name tag because I feel like I work today. I got to carry my grocery to. I mean, like, so okay. So she's doing all of those things, and then she's doing lowering rents, which are out of control everywhere, and providing more down payment assistance. So she's really focusing on building a middle class and helping people who are in the middle class who can't get over that hump because they can't get that little cash infusion to take their business to scale their business to the next level, or they can't they can't save enough just to get that down payment together for that house that they would be able to afford the house note on if they could just get that down payment together, right? And so she's doing things that are going to help everybody, not just Black folks, not just women, not just what have you. She's doing those things that's going to help everybody. So those are what I like her policies. I mean, the other stuff that people are mad about, I'm not thinking about any of that. As a woman, as a mother of a child who's a woman, a girl, I want us to have her full health care options, period. So I'm not talking about the religious aspects of abortion or what you do. The same people against abortion cheered when they put that innocent Black man to death last week, right? So I'm just like, I don't even have time to hear about the pro-life stuff because you don't care about kids once they get here. As an adopted parent, we can talk about that tomorrow too, Tony. Y'all don't care when they get here. You don't do anything for them. 500,000 is sitting in foster care right now. 500,000. Sitting in foster care right now, but you're like, oh no, bring them here. We're gonna do. Stop it. So those are the policies I think that are most interesting. She has lots of them, and actually fixing the immigration issue, right? Making it more streamlined and making it more clear and defined about how you become an immigrant, since there's so many different ways that you can do that depending on which country you come here from.
Right. So, Chris, I want you to follow up on that. Again, why do you think this? Oh, I'm sorry. You guys answered that question already. So, Chris, let me ask you this, my friend. Anything you want to follow up on what Dr. Burton said? And I have a question directly for you.
Absolutely. So, from what I've seen from the GOP, first of all, xenophobia is not a policy. Some of the things that they predict, some of the things that they present as policies aren't necessarily policies. They aren't solutions. They aren't documented understandings of how things work out. Obviously, they stray away from the things that failed in the past. Think about Obamacare, which is not called Obamacare anymore, but he stated that was going to be eradicated day one. It wasn't. So if you just look at somebody that already held this job,
right,
they've shown you there is no way you get a job, fail, even with the qualifications of COVID, and can get that job when it's the most important job in the world again. Right. That's a disqualifier to me. But the lack of policy in that regard is very overwhelming. She spoke about the policies that Vice President Harris has before her. I haven't seen anything from the GOP that's resounding from a policy perspective, because the simple fact is policies cascade and in the concept of the economy. So this misnomer that Republicans are for business would lead you to believe that Democrats are anti-business, and that's absolutely fraudulent. That's absolutely not the case, because she just talked about the proliferation of entrepreneurs. She just talked about more businesses, more opportunities. The fact is now it's becoming a gateway for more people, more diverse diaspora of people, and that's where the issues come. So you have special interests that are going on, and I'm not going to beat this dead drum, right? The fact that you can have a rally, and I'll be brief here, Tony, that you can have a rally and you have at least corporate back interest being audaciously presented is weird in politics to me. But at most, foreign back interest in the form of Elon Musk at your rallies.
Right.
If somebody else would have did that and had a foreign actor, a Putin, giving you a thumbs up on your election, you getting likes by Kim Jong-un. Why are we even?
Right.
This is ignorant at this point. Now it's all
right.
It's exhaustive. And so when you have then you know that's what's going on, is pockets being lined. And when you talk about deceitful, duplicitous business practices, this is not just business practices. These are life practices for this candidate.
Right.
And therefore, it's hard to think that he would divorce that. The last thing I'll say on that is when he was elected, my quotation fingers are up for all those on audio. The first time, the good man Barack Obama said, give him a chance. He was dead wrong. And it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, but you know what, though, buddy? So here's the thing. So, number one, thank you both for that. I really, and again, excellent insights from both of you guys. And I hope the audience is listening, because as you can hear from Dr. Burton and Chris P. Reed, they do their research. They are citizens, and they show their citizenship by being involved, okay, by being educated on what's being said, what's really happening, and then pushing back the fluff. So I hope that you really appreciate what they're talking about. The one thing I will say, though, Chris, is that the Republicans are for business. Big business, okay? They're for the massive corporations, right? Because they want to give corporate tax breaks and stuff to that nature, right? So they're not for they say they're for small business, but they're not. They're for big corporations, all right? Now, let me ask you this, and I would love to see if you have a thought on it, Chris, and then Dr. Burton, I'll turn it over to you, and then I'm going to ask you guys for your predictions, and then implications if the other person, whoever wins. Why isn't, I'm missing something here. And look, Black people are not a monolith. Let's be fair, okay? Black people, and again, let's just put this in the right context. Black people until, and Dr. Burton, you and I talked about this, until civil rights era, the majority of them voted Republican. Okay, just to be clear here, right? Because we're talking two different parties now and then, okay? The Democrats back in prior to the 60s was the Klan, all right? There was the ones that was against civil rights and they were all Jim Crow, blah, blah, blah. Black people voted for
the Dixiecrats.
The Dixiecrats. Thank you. Dixiecrats, right? So they wasn't voting for them, okay? Black people mostly voted Republican, okay? Now, we know it's a different world, so I just wanted to say that. However, the question I have for you, Chris, and then I'm gonna turn to Dr. Burton before we get final thoughts and predictions. Why is it we're hearing that? And here, well, let me position it this way. We have a first Black female woman running for president. Okay, and that's a historic thing. Okay, historic. We had a Black president. Okay, now we have a Black female vice president that has a chance 3 weeks away, votes go her way, to be the first, not just female president in the United States, but Black female president in the United States, okay? Now, we talked about policies and stuff to that nature. Dr. Burton did a good job. Both of you guys broke it down, right? Why are we here? And again, Black people are not a monolith, so we know that. Black people vote for all different types of people. But why are we hearing that Black men, and it's a small percentage, but they struggle. They don't want to vote for Kamala Harris. So can anybody give me some insight in that, and the audience some insight of why this is an issue, and why, if it is an issue, and it must be because you've heard it enough, why is it that those individuals don't want to vote for her?
I can do that. Let me start by saying, as a leader in big business, you're nothing without the people. And so I don't want people to believe that you think big business is just the one percenters. Big business is the people. It is the employee. It is the machine, the frontline workers, and things of that nature. So those people who exist in those roles, you are big business. And so they should be residing and resonating with you, as well as just the people at the top. That's number one.
Yeah.
Now, why are black men or folks not voting for Kamala Harris? A lot of it is called a conditioned response. The psychological conditioning is just getting over the concept of change. Change is something that people are psychologically natural to resist, and therefore they're hesitant. And when you make it easy to not have to change, because the reality of it is also, no one wants to be on the losing side. Let's just keep it real, right? And so if you think I could come out on this being everybody wants to be part of the change, this is why bandwagons exist and things of that nature, right? So the concept of, if I vote for her, I'm going to have to do extra work and understand why I'm making this decision, because it's quote unquote against the grain, not realizing you haven't kept up with the times. You haven't kept up with the pulse of things.
When just so I'm clear here, when you say against the grain, they don't want to change from what? Because
from a male-dominated United States.
Okay,
of
so
America.
then say it that way, then, right? Okay, then say it that way, because I thought you were talking from an administration standpoint, right?
Here's both, yes, and both.
But she's in the administration. She's in the administration. She's the incumbent. She's the incumbent.
She is the incumbent.
Okay.
She is the incumbent. But the recognition, the emotional recognition, she gets slighted for things that if a man was doing the same things in her, if it had been a male vice president, forget the color, he would have gotten so much more credit for the things that he's been aligned with.
Okay, so I'm clear. I'm clear.
Than anything else. So in the idea of, and another thing, Tony, and good, bad, or indifferent, I don't know what to believe. Like you're regurgitating things that you've seen on quote unquote reputable outlets, as far as she's behind or she's ahead or people don't want to rock with her, whatever. To me, that's propaganda. You're an ad guy. You know how ads work. That's propaganda.
But buddy, so before I give you my thoughts, Dr. Burton, let me hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. We have a former president who is involved with an insurrection, is a convicted felon. He's facing
Shouldn't even be
zillion
close.
charges in other
Shouldn't be
places. He owes a ton of money. He was negligent with how he handled COVID. He didn't want to handle that the way we handled other pandemics, which is why it landed here in the U.S. It was completely avoidable. Millions of people dying, all these people with long COVID, all this stuff, avoidable, because he didn't want a public relations issue on his hands. I don't know what any free-thinking black person, because I don't know how many black people y'all saw die in COVID or get sick in COVID, or how many babies you saw left with no parents in COVID. I saw a lot. Would in their right mind vote for this man because he promised them a tax cut. But let me just go ahead and help you. If you make under $250,000, it's not going to come to you anyway. The only person that's going to get a tax cut that's going to come to you, is going to give you one, is going to be Kamala Harris. It's going to be about $2,500. That's it. All right. So neither one of them are like really going to be able to give you anything. Both of them have said that they want to do a child care credit. Trump wants to do $5,000. That's the one thing they agree on, and I agree with both of them. And Kamala says she wants to do $6,000. Those are good things, right? But if you look at this man's performance beforehand, and I'm really mad at the Republican Party. Let me say this too. I used to work for the Republican Party. People don't know that about me. That's how I actually came to have these very informed opinions about things. And I understand that not all Republicans are Trump Republicans. And I understand that people think differently about things or what have you. But out of all the people that you got out here, you chose him. Like, you think that's the best that you can do?
Right.
You think that's the best that you can do in terms of the president of the United States? That is sad. If he's the best that you can do, they need to disband the party and start over. Truly.
Right.
If that's the best that you can do, if you have people stepping over themselves to bow down to this man who's in bed with all of our like lifelong opposition, like our lifelong people that we don't fool with at all. I was like, did we forget about the bed? Have we forgotten about like
Right. All those things.
he's in bed with all these people. You claim to love the military, but you are in bed with Putin and China.
Right.
You claim to love police officers, but you got them out here going against people with all these automatic weapons. You're sending them out here to go against people with automatic weapons. You claim to love the kids. You got the kids getting shot up with these automatic weapons at school. Every other month, we got some kind of warning coming over our phones talking about somebody calling a threat. So this is my point. Black men, Black women have raised you. We have loved you, and we have continued to do so, and will continue to do so. And I know people don't want to say this to Black men, but I say this shit. You owe us. You owe us. 70% of us been raising your babies for over 25 years by our damn selves. You owe us. So no, you don't get to partner with the white man because he has a penis. You don't get to do that. No, you don't. You don't get to pretend like the most qualified candidate ever to be to be running for president has no qualifications. You don't get to be mad because she was a prosecutor when we didn't have Black prosecutors. And most prosecutors, 90% of prosecutors are white men anyway, and half of them are in Congress. And you haven't said anything to them about it.
Right.
You know, she was prosecuting crimes against the environment and sexual crimes. So if she put your cousin in jail, which I see all the time online, I'm sorry if your cousin is a rapist or whatever, they need to be in jail. All right. So I don't know what the problem is. All the stuff I just said in her policies directly affect Black men. You are going to gain from it. I haven't seen anything in his policies other than the child care credit. And that's if you're taking care of your child, which you better be doing, that will affect you positively. Not one thing.
Right.
So that's what I have to say. You owe us, damn it. You want to be our protectors and our providers? Vote for us in this election.
So
That's it.
Tell us how you really feel. You know what I'm saying?
Man, because you've been holding up this whole time. I don't know if you know.
Yes, I got a Black daddy. Yes, I got a Black daddy. I do.
Go ahead,
I had
Chris.
two
Go
Black
ahead.
grandfathers too.
Go ahead,
I'll
Chris.
say this on behalf of Black men. Educate yourself, look at the policies, look at all the things that we've derived throughout this entire episode. And then at the end, use the fact that she is, a Black woman as a bonus point. All right. So
Exactly.
because she'll win if you just look at those other things. Like I said, take out those three components and just look at the stuff, the meat, you know what I mean? Then she'll win or she'll gain your favor. But then if you add on what Dr. Burton was saying, the fact that she's a Black woman, queen of the earth type situation, that should just send you over the threshold, so to speak. So just keep that in mind.
So listen, I want to get you guys, because we're going to keep rolling, but this is really, really good. But I just got to say something on this. Mm-hmm. I do feel that it is a sexist thing. I feel that it can't be a policy thing. That makes no sense. Okay. And I remember, I don't know if it was Obama or somebody spoke. I think it is, I'm not voting for her because she's a woman, she's this, and she's a Black one. And these are from Black men. And again, I'm not speaking to them, but this is my sense, because it can't be a policy issue. Can't be. All right. And at the same time, it can't be that they think that Trump, and at the end of the day, we got you, and let's be fair though too. And I hear everybody's policies. I hear her policies. He may have some policies, but at the end of the day, you own your own destiny. Okay, nobody sitting up in any political office can control you or make you successful or make you fail or make you a failure. All right. At the end of the day, you have the ability to govern and run your life. Let's be fair here. I don't care who's been in power. Right, since this country has been indoctrinated in 1776. People of color have had a challenge, regardless if it was a Democrat or a Republican, okay? It didn't matter. So my point is that for you to sit back, if that's your case, and for you to say, I'm not voting because she's a woman, okay, makes no sense, number one. Number two, you would rather give your vote to this other guy who I don't even want to get into it because Dr. Burton just went through his background. How does he make you better? That's what I want to understand. Please, So it has to be more of a chauvinist type situation, all right? And black men have always, I want to use this as, because I don't want to say all, because it's not fair, but some black men have had a problem with black women, strong black women leading. Okay? And they don't want to say it. They'll come up with a million other reasons. All right? My mother was a strong black woman. She always had tough relationships with men because she would call them out and hold them accountable because they wasn't living up to their point of what they were supposed to do. Okay? And so at the end of the day, that's just my opinion. Okay? Some people, if you like his policy better, okay, say that. But don't just make it about she's a woman. All right. We gotta. I mean, we've been going off. So I want to get you guys' predictions. Who you think gonna win, and then I love to hear if who you don't think gonna win. What's the implications for the country? Chris, you go first, buddy.
Cool, no problem.
Yeah, because we'll be another 30 minutes with Dr. Burton. You know what I'm saying?
So the concept is this. Without any significant emotion and kind of using the old adage, I just follow the money. She raised $1 billion, fam. So let's just keep it like I follow the money. And so I believe that if you use that old adage, she's going to win because the money is behind her. So therefore the interests are behind her. And I do believe that people have a good heart intrinsically. So think about it like this. And I'll say this. The one thing is there was no loss of civility. And it was very encouraging when the vice presidential debate landed. All the news outlets were talking, ironically, about how civil and diplomatic the two gentlemen were when they spoke to each other. So the fact that we could still identify it and recognize it is good. When we thought that politics is just muckraking and slanderous and forgetting about the mute and talking over people and talking down to women and all of that type of stuff, now we realize it don't have to be like that. And I think that taste actually hurt the campaign for the GOP because they realized even the outlets that rock with them said that the civility of the vice presidential campaign was refreshing. So we're longing as a country for some sense, for some maturity.
Right.
And so I believe because of that, she would win. The implication as it relates to the other party is he's currently figuring out how to fleece the people of whatever he can when this don't happen. And he's going to whiny baby this thing. And he's going to tap into the side of the people who inappropriately feel downtrodden or disenfranchised, regardless of the records and the census and all this other thing. He's going to tap into the base, primal, negative nature of his constituents, of his people, and going to try to figure out a genius way around all of this because that's what he does. He has desire to be a lifelong dictator. He idealizes these dictators, the Kim Jong-uns and the Putins, the people who win unanimous, the guy that's in Hungary. He loves these guys because he feels like this too is possible. These are his mentors. These are the people that he looks up to, and he brings it out, unfortunately, in your face, in conversation.
Right.
And so I think that we need to brace ourselves and prepare ourselves for the construct of him not winning, but the party, and Dr. Burton said this earlier, the party is going to have a hard time recovering from this. You guys have to realize there's been Whigs, there's been Federalists, there's been so many different parties. This party is not beyond reproach. This party is not beyond reformation. They called it the new Republican Party years ago. Well, maybe they put two news on it this time. But it's going to have to change. It's going to have to change the way in which it does business, but so are the Democrats. They have to make sure that they're prepared appropriately with a candidate in the future. We have to reform the way that we do things because just throwing somebody up there because they're famous, it's not a reality TV show. It's our lives and it's our government and it's our future.
All right, Dr. Burton, keep it tight now. Keep it tight. Let me hear from you. Thanks, Chris.
Kamala in 4 hours. I think Kamala is going to pull it out. Vice President Harris is going to pull it out. She is the most qualified of the two. We need a grown-up in the room, and we need somebody to restore dignity and who isn't facing all kinds of charges, even if the Supreme Court's going to let him off the hook. We need to restore some dignity to our office of the presidency. We need to get some stability. I mean, it has been a frenzy since Donald Trump came into national politics. And people, it's really changed not only the political landscape, but really the landscape of this country. And that is powerful. So that's why we can't value what that role is and how it can impact and influence society. But yes, I am hoping it's not only the money. I think that she is the most qualified. I think the people who are hating on her and saying they're not going to vote for her because she's a woman probably aren't going to vote anyway. Because I don't even know who those people, how you can even say that in 2024.
Right, right.
Wives and daughters and mothers and aunts and stuff. I just don't know those people. But yeah, it's Kamala in 2024, and hopefully she'll have the support that she needs in order to succeed in the job. And then we got to get to work on Congress so that she can actually put some things in place that could actually pass.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right. Guys, I want to thank you. You guys have been awesome. This has been a lot of fun, very educational. I learned a lot from listening to both of you guys. Listen, you guys are plugged in really, really tight, so I want to thank you. I want to leave just a final thought. Look, obviously our platform is for having people come on, share their stories to educate the mainstream. And it's very important that we did this episode on a presidential election. Because at the end of the day, and I know I said earlier about regardless of who's in power or who's sitting in that seat, you still have the ability to go out and do your thing or not do your thing, right? However, all that being said, this is an important election. And you heard it from Dr. Burton and Chris B. Reed. This is either moving forward or moving backwards, okay? And I had no problem on telling you guys today that I will not vote for Donald Trump, all right? And at the end of the day, let me tell you why. Real simple, okay? So most of you don't know, but I am a registered Republican. I've been a registered Republican since 1990, okay? I voted for the father Bush, okay? I voted for Clinton. Then I voted for the son Bush, okay? I voted for Obama, all right? So at the end of the day, I voted for Clinton. At the end of the day, I believe in certain things, okay? But at the end of the day, to have somebody who has done what he has done to this country, all right, from the time that he started running, who's been so divisive. A president is about bringing people together. Regardless look, there's people that became president, I ain't like them, right? But at the end of the day, they're the president. Okay? And that's how you're supposed to look at this office. And they held themselves, all right, to a certain decorum because, as Dr. Burton said, this is the most powerful office on the planet. And what we say or don't say reverberates around the globe. Okay? And you cannot take that lightly. Okay? It's very important. And to have a man that tried to, and Chris, we did Wilmington's Lie. Dr. Burton, you came on and we did a reckoning of Wilmington's Lie. We talked about what happened in 1898. And this was almost a mirror of that in 2020, okay, in the insurrection on January 6th. I'm sorry. I would never vote for anybody that would do that, all right, because they lost and then tried to create civil war. And you can throw in all the other felonies and stuff to that nature, but once you go to that level, you ain't got my vote. Because here's the thing. I know what you will do if you get back into office. It's not about the country, it's about you. And to what Chris P. Reed said about want to have dictatorship rule and stuff to that nature, and then how the Supreme Court now is given presidential immunity, you wouldn't be able to stop this dude. And we didn't even get a chance to talk about, once you come into power, the people that you put around you. Okay? Those people will now be putting policies and it will be chaos. It would be, this country would take a huge step back domestically and internationally. Okay? Now, let me say this too. I wasn't a big Kamala Harris fan. I'll be straight up. Okay, flat out. Didn't know a lot about Kamala. And I remember when Biden made her his vice president, I was like, okay, he's probably get him over the top. But there was a couple other people that I liked prior to that. I forget her name, who was the police commissioner or the sheriff down in Florida. I forget her name, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Valerie.
All that, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. All that being said, back to Dr. Burton's point, when you look at qualification, she's qualified to be president. You look at the policies that she put in place. Some of those, if she becomes president, some of those become real. Some of those won't become real. But that would be no different than any president. Okay? So at the end of the day, based on the choices that we have, that's clear. There's, in my opinion, there's no other. This is me. This is Tony Tidbit. There's nobody else I would vote for. Okay? But Kamala Harris. Now, my prediction, I don't know. Okay? I think it's going to be a toss-up. Right? Because here's the thing. There's one or two things that's going to happen. Either she wins in a landslide because you can't believe at the polls, okay? And we've seen that happen before, right? Because going back to what you were saying about Kine and Chris, you were saying about and the money, so you can't get caught up. But if it's not that, then it's going to be a nail biter, right? But I know where I'm going to vote, and I'm telling our audience, you vote for whoever you feel. And yeah, this episode was a little one-sided, right? But guess what? This is what we believe. I didn't talk to Dr. Burton. I didn't talk to Chris P. Reed prior to this episode. We were just going to come on and talk about it. And guess what? We gave what we believe. We gave our thought process. And guess what? We've done our homework. And we're asking you to do the exact same thing. And at the end of the day, if you flipping a coin, but if you go out and vote, that's really the most important. The last thing I want to hear from anybody is I didn't vote, right? And if you didn't vote, you ain't got nothing to say. Don't even show up then. But you ain't got nothing to say. You can't complain. Can't do nothing, because this is your one day to show and exercise your citizenship here in the United States. So make sure that you go out and vote. It's the most important thing that you can do, and it's an important thing for our democracy, right? So final thoughts, real tight.
Okay, I'll go first.
Go first, buddy.
I want her to finale.
Yeah, and then we got to go, but go.
Cool. So the situation is, we always talk about go out and do your own research, your own homework. I cannot back someone who talks about my taxes, who's a multimillionaire and pays $750 in taxes. Look it up. Okay, that's number first. And then people who don't have my interest don't have my vote. Okay, real simple. And so not that she has all the interest, because even in the concept of over $250,000, brothers, it's not worth the amount of money you would gain there to sell your soul.
That's right. Okay, bro. Okay, so we know where you going. And look, you can go anywhere you want to go. I ain't going to get mad at you. But at the end of the day, as long as you vote. Dr. Burton, final thoughts.
Yes. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Ukraine. All these people who want to support the Ukraine and vote for Donald Trump, you cannot do both. If he gets in, the money's cut off to Ukraine, period. Russia's going, he's already said it. Read the policy, read the website, read the stuff. LGBTQ populations are under attack and losing rights at the state level. And so we do need to have someone in office who is attuned to that and comes from a place where they have done that work before and have had policies at the state level and can enact those policies to protect those populations as well, because they deserve civil rights and protections as well. I think that a lot of times I say we vote with our dollars, and I think we do when we buy products and support certain businesses. But this time, I think you really have to decide just to bring it home. Are you voting for the past, or are you voting for the future? Like, what do you want America to look like? And what do you want the office of the president to look like to other people as well? Not only to you and to this country, but to the rest of the world. All right? So think about it, and definitely, I'm with Tony. I mean, I really believe vote. You don't have to vote the way I vote, but participate in the process, because I do not want to hear it if you did not vote or if you voted third party, knowing that they're not even on most of the ballots in most of the states. If you waste your vote in that way, do not talk to me. We cannot be friends. But vote.
But vote. Thank you, Dr. Burton and Crispy Reed. Thank you. So I think it's now time for what?
Tony's Tidbit.
All right. So the tidbit today is this. Democracy thrives when informed minds engage. Make your voice heard. Make your vote count. And you heard that today from Dr. Nsenga Burton and Crispy Reed.
So obviously at this point in time, I would be remiss, absolutely, if I did not remind you to tune in to the weekly segment, Need to Know with Nsenga, where you have the powerful, magnanimous, beautiful, wonderful Dr. Nsenga Burton represent a Black Executive Perspective podcast, where she dives into crucial and critical topics of all shapes and sizes that help our community and our world become a better place. Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's educational, sometimes it's social, sometimes it's spiritual, but she's always bringing this energy that you've seen today on steroids in a bite-sized, compact way, so you can take it with you and you can share it all week with whomever you run into. So please do not miss that. It's a wonderful look.
Absolutely. If you never checked out Need to Know with Dr. Nsenga, you just got a version of it right here on this episode. So every Thursday, definitely check her out. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, Decision 2024, Navigating the Presidential Election with Insight and Expertise.
All right, so at this point in time, we definitely want to make sure that you understand that we are always trying to decrease discrimination wherever we can, and we do that with our call to action, which is LESS, L-E-S-S. That L is learn. Educate yourself on racial and cultural nuances so that you can feel better about how you navigate this world and understand other people.
Absolutely. And then after you learn, E stands for empathy. Now you've learned about your friends and colleagues, so now you should be more empathetic to what they go through, because you now can be able to walk in their shoes.
S stands for share, and that means to share information with informed information, factual information, fact-based information with people, so that they better understand not only the things they're being educated about and the things that they're having empathy about, but also so that they can pass on the knowledge that they gain from those other two categories.
Absolutely, right? And then the final S is stop. We want to stop discrimination as it walks in your path. So if you're at the Thanksgiving table and grandma says something inappropriate, you say, "Grandma, we don't believe that, we don't say that," and you stop it, right? So if everybody can incorporate less, LESS, will build a more fair, more understanding world. And guess what? You'll be able to see the change that you want to see, because less will become more.
We want to remind you to tune in to all of Black Executive Perspective podcast and segments. Look at some previous ones to catch up to where we are now. But we absolutely want to encourage you to go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, leave us reviews, subscribe wherever you're listening to us. Keep us informed so that way we can keep you informed on things that matter to you. And where can they find us for these things, Tony?
Yeah, thanks. Excellent question, Chris. So you can follow a Black Executive Perspective podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on our socials, on LinkedIn, X, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at A Black Exec. For my esteemed, fabulous, hyphenated guests, Dr. Nsenga Burton, and the co-host with the most, Crispy Reed. I am Tony Tidbit. We talked about it. We learned a lot about it today. And guess what? We love you, and we're out.
A Black Executive Perspective.